This is the second part of a two-part DARPL professional learning resource. It is aimed at leaders in the voluntary and statutory youth and community work sectors in Wales. After engaging in this two-part DARPL professional learning resource, we hope that leaders will feel able to share this learning with teams working directly in communities with young people. DARPL, or Diversity and Anti-Racist Professional Learning, is a national professional learning model comprising anti-racist professional learning provisions and resources for education professionals. DARPL was founded as a community of practice in 2021, funded by the Welsh Government, and is based at Cardiff Metropolitan University. This session builds on part one of the Supporting Youth Work Leaders Working Towards the Anti-Racist Wales Action Plan, which was designed and delivered by Karen Brooke of Ocean Education. This session is led by Urban Circle. Urban Circle are a grassroots youth arts and advocacy charity from Newport, South Wales, and a member of DARPL. Urban Circle work with young people from underrepresented communities in Newport and the surrounding areas. We run youth work, dance, drama, creative media, and wellbeing activities. Urban Circle was established in 2006. Most of the team is made up of young people who were once participants and who are now qualified youth workers and creative artists. Urban Circle appreciate the involvement of Newport City Council Youth Service, who have acted as a critical friend in the design of this resource. So the aims of this professional learning session are to consider how youth and community work contributed to an anti-racist Wales, to consider some real-life examples of racism within a youth and community work setting, and reflect on organisational and individual responses, to reflect on the place of youth work within the Anti-Racist Wales Action Plan 2022-2024, to explore the use of baseline assessment in a youth work setting. To briefly recap on content shared by Karen in session 1. The Welsh Government published the Anti-Racist Wales Action Plan in June 2022 in response to the deeply rooted racial inequalities experienced by Black, Asian and minority ethnic people in Wales. The action plan is aimed at all public services, all of whom are expected to work towards an anti-racist Wales by 2030. The action plan focuses on the realities of institutional and structural racism, emphasising that ethnic minority people are disproportionately disadvantaged at nearly every level of every system in Wales. It centres on the 6 contexts where people in Wales experience racism, as shown on the slide, all of which are relevant to young people aged 11 to 25 in a youth work setting. It sets out the actions that Welsh Government will take to tackle racism experienced in context. It is different to other Welsh Government-led action plans in 3 main ways. These are: it has been co-designed by people with both lived experience of racism and learnt experience. It considers intersectionality and how having several disadvantages, for example, through race and gender, or race and disability, can multiply discrimination and disadvantage. It takes a strength-based approach, recognising the strengths of ethnic minority people in leadership and in surviving racism. There is a short video linked to this slide. It considers the work of the Wales Anti-Racist Action Plan in the context of education, childcare and play work. Unfortunately, there isn't a youth work equivalent, but the short video does explain the importance of this work and its relevance to the education workforce in Wales. Crucially, the action plan was refreshed in 2024 and there are several changes to this updated plan. In recognition of the importance of leadership in driving and embedding cultural change, the leadership chapter has been rewritten and strengthened. There is a renewed focus on delivery and a greater understanding again of the effect of intersectionality. As previously referenced, intersectionality describes how multiple social identities overlap and interact to create and uphold systems of both oppression and privilege. The term has its roots in black feminist activism and was originally coined by Kimberly Williams Crenshaw in 1989. Crenshaw, who is a scholar and writer on civil rights and critical race theory, and a distinguished professor of law at the University of California, Los Angeles, used the term intersectionality to refer to the double discrimination of racism and sexism faced by black women. There is also a recognition that the impact of the Anti-Racist Wales Action Plan is not yet seen, and more focus on narrowing the information gap is needed. The implementation gap is the difference between what is planned and what actually happens. The action plan introduces 4 regional forums directly engaging with black, Asian and minority ethnic people to test and inform the implementation of the Anti-Racist Wales Action Plan on the ground. The plan highlights in particular the specific concerns of groups such as Gypsy Roma and travellers. And in the refreshed plan, Welsh Government reiterates the rights-based approach as set out later in this session, including a commitment to the Welsh Language Measure 2011, the Wellbeing of Future Generation Wales Act 2015, the Human Rights Act 1998, the United Nations Conventions on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination, and the Equality Act 2010. Really significant is the inclusion of discussion on and goal setting for the youth work sector in Wales. Welsh Government acknowledge that the actions set out for youth work are new to the Anti-Racist Wales Action Plan. You can read more via the link on the slide. The Anti-Racist Wales Action Plan recognises that youth work has a vital role to play in supporting young people with issues of racism through informal and non-informal learning. The Anti-Racist Wales Action Plan 2024 references the aims of the Interim Youth Work Board for Wales 2021, which recommends that the Welsh Government and the youth work sector should work together to promote equality, inclusion and diversity, both in terms of access to youth work services in Wales and in relation to the role that youth work services can play in proactively challenging discriminatory attitudes and behaviours within society. For the first time, the Anti-Racist Wales Action Plan sets out a goal and related actions for the youth work sector in Wales. This is a goal that youth work leaders should be working towards, realised through the following actions. The Anti-Racist Wales Action Plan 2024 requires youth work leaders to ensure that the following actions take place within youth work settings. To hold a series of discussions with young people to better understand how racist behaviour has acted as a barrier for them and their peers to access youth work, with the aim of using this testimony to seek ways of removing these barriers. Hold a series of discussions with young people to better understand how youth work provision has helped them and their peers to address racism in wider society. And for this testimony to be shared with the youth work and wider statutory education sector to help inform the design of future provision. As part of wider work to develop a youth work workforce that delivers for young people from all backgrounds, providing support and professional learning opportunities for youth work practitioners on the impact of racism and the barriers this may create for young people to engage with youth work services. Developing tools and skills to enable youth work practitioners to develop their confidence to challenge racism in youth work settings, and to help the young people they work with to challenge racism across society and build an anti-racist youth workforce. Deliver workshops to provide an opportunity for Welsh Government and its grant recipients to share information on how funding decisions are made, including funding to support anti-racism in the youth work sector, in order to build greater transparency on how funding is provided and allocated. You can read more about this refreshed Anti-Racist Wales Action Plan via the link on the slide. Anti-racism is at the heart of many of the ideas that underpin youth and community work. The final report of the Interim Youth Work Board in 2021 makes the recommendation that everyone working in youth work should make sure all young people are treated equally and diversity is encouraged. So we should remind ourselves of the links between anti-racism and good youth work practice. We will begin with exploring relevant ideas before considering how we put them into practice in our work with young people and in communities. Please read the points on the slide. Anti-oppressive and anti-discriminatory practice involves youth workers actively listening to young people and others, creating an environment where young people can share their perspectives and lived experiences and be heard. Together with young people, youth workers identify the root cause of oppression and discrimination, whether that is in communities, structures, or institutions, and advocate for and with young people to challenge such unfairness. Youth workers contribute to environments where young people empower themselves. They challenge power and privilege through showing solidarity with young people, their families, and their communities. This is the heart of anti-oppressive and anti-discriminatory practice within a youth work context. The National Youth Agency, writing in 2023, sum it up perfectly, stating, "Youth work is built on a foundation of anti-oppressive and anti-discriminatory practice. This means it should be inclusive, accessible and engaging for all young people. Everyone has a place and a home within youth work. Great youth work supports and empowers young people to challenge these things for themselves and others, and works to make a society fairer and better place for everyone." A second principle that links youth and community work and anti-racism is children's rights. Youth work is founded on children's rights, adhering to the United Nations Convention of the Rights of the Child, which was published by UNICEF in 1989. In a youth work context, children's rights are enacted through their participation. The flagship policy of youth work, Extending Entitlement, published in 2000, sets out the ambition for the delivery of youth support services in Wales and included all services, support and opportunities for young people between 11 and 25, wherever they happen, whoever is delivering them and wherever the funding originates. It sets out to make a significant difference to young people's lives, recognising all the services and support which might contribute to their development, and all the experiences and opportunities that have the potential to enrich their lives and their learning. It took full account of the then Welsh Assembly's commitment to the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child. Young people themselves should be involved in the design of services, the identification of opportunities, and in the evaluation of their impact. 10 entitlements were identified as essential to enable young people to achieve their potential. They are your rights, being heard, feeling good, education and employment, taking part, getting involved, being individual, easy access, health and well-being, access to information and guidance, and safety and security. The youth work participation agenda has grown in tandem with the changing recognition of the importance of children's rights. As set out in the Wellbeing of Future Generations, Wales Act 2015, local authorities have a duty to promote and facilitate children and young people's participation and involvement in decisions that affect them. Each local authority must therefore ensure clear pathways are in place to help young people participate and be involved in decisions made regarding the design and delivery of the youth work offer in their area. Paraphrased as the right of the child to be heard, Article 12 of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child is the most visible manifestation of this, and although the UNCRC should be seen as a whole with rights interconnected and with no right more important than another, Georgi, writing in 2010, argues that the participation is the right of rights, a prerequisite to the realisation of all other rights. So what has this got to do with anti-racism? When we talk about children's rights and participation, we should remember that we are talking about all children and all rights. Furthermore, there are particular articles that serve our work towards an anti-racist Wales. Article 2 reminds us that every child has rights, without discrimination of any kind. Article 13 gives all children and young people freedom of expression. Article 14 protects children and young people's rights to thoughts, belief and religion. Article 30 is aimed at children from minority or indigenous groups and states that every child has a right to learn and use the language, customs and religion of their family, whether or not these are shared by the majority of the people in the country where they live. Youth workers know that these rights are not realised in the lives of all young people. Youth work leaders have a professional and ethical duty to challenge this iniquity. We can do this by making every effort to reach as wide a range of young people as possible, including those who are not currently engaged with youth work. This focus on and priority afforded to underrepresented groups is fundamental to anti-racist practice in a youth and community work setting. The Children and Young People's National Participation Standards, linked to in the reference page of this resource, underpin the structures that are put in place to meet this requirement. Youth work leaders should also refer to the right way, a children's rights approach in Wales, again linked to the reference page of this resource. Linked to the promotion of children's rights in Wales is the work of the Children's Commissioner for Wales. The Commissioner supports children and young people to find out about their rights under the United Nations Conventions on the Rights of the Child. He listens to children and young people to find out what's important to them. Advises children, young people and those who care for them if they think they've been treated unfairly. Influences governments and other organisations who say they're going to make a difference to children's lives, making sure they keep their promises to children and young people. Speaks up for children and young people in Wales on important issues. On important issues, the Commissioners Take It Seriously Report 2023 reported that very many children and young people experience racism and racist incidents within secondary school, and few have confidence in how this is dealt with. Teachers and stakeholders discussed similar experiences, echoing issues of lack of confidence and lack of clarity on how to respond to racist incidents. We have included some of the qualitative comments made by children on this slide. The full report can be read via the link. Whilst undertaking within a school's context, the findings and organisational learning is relevant to youth work leaders as well as school leaders. The Principles and Purposes of Youth Work in Wales, most recently published in 2022, offers an opportunity for youth work leaders to embed anti-racism education into youth and community work curricular activities, facilitated through informal and non-formal learning. The 5 pillars will be familiar to you. At this point, please take a few minutes firstly to consider how the activities facilitated in your youth work settings reflect the 5 pillars, and where beyond inclusive, informal and non-formal learning centred on anti-racism might fit. The 2024 ESTIN guidance for pilot inspections in youth work sets out the framework for HMI inspection of this sector. The first question, how does youth work help young people achieve their potential, is measured against the 5 pillars. 1, educative, 2, expressive, 3, participative, 4, inclusive, and 5, empowering. Inspectors will also examine how effective providers' arrangements are for preventing and addressing bullying, harassment, and discrimination. We are moving on now to consider these real practice examples. We hope that these practice examples can serve as prompts for discussion with your teams, allowing you to collectively and critically reflect for action and plan how you and your teams are equipped to respond to similar racist incidents. Please read the 3 practice examples and take some time to make some notes about any points that resonate with you. We will then move on to share some reflective questions that aim to support your individual and organisational responses to situations such as these. Consider these reflective questions. You may want to use these to reflect as an individual or with your team. Please read the second practice example, and again, we will consider some reflective questions on the next slide. Please watch this short video of Akela discussing the use of the N-word. Reflect on any learning for you following this and consider how this may equip you to respond to the use of the N-word by young people in a youth work context, and also to support your teams and or colleagues in doing so.
Hi, Carla. On the same sort of train of thought, I wanted to ask you what your thoughts are on the N-word and like the use of that in rap music, because obviously as a white person I've been brought up never to ever use that word, but a lot of the music I listen to says it 20 times in every song.
Yeah, for sure.
So I wanted to know what your thoughts are on that, and like whether you think it's a word that's become obsolete or whether you think that there are negative consequences on the fact that it's so widely used.
I do, I very much do. I used to be someone who used the word all the time, as some of you may or may not know. I came to a stage in my life where one of my elders said to me, "You're better than that." And I started reading a bit more. I started studying the history of the word. I started looking at the brutality that had been underpinned by this word. Let me be clear, I'm not against people using the word. I'm just against the stupid idea that it's now become a term of endearment. It hasn't. It has so much blood attached to it. For me, it means what it's always meant. It is a term of white supremacist genocide. It is a word that says African people are not human. It was a way of reducing people to subhuman status, which led to, as I've said to you, people being put in zoos or public lynchings in America, where someone could literally be barbecued in public and people thought it was perfectly acceptable to bring their child, give their child the day of school to come and watch a person be barbecued in public. Rail systems would operate special lynching day rail cards. After the lynching, there'd be postcards with the dead person on front of it. They'd send out as souvenirs. So this is the history behind that word. If we look at early hip-hop, when hip-hop was a bit more independent, when hip-hop was owned a bit more by the black community, we see that hip-hop was completely offensive to everyone. People would say cracker, they'd say honky, they'd say nigger. You'd have Ice Cube making inappropriate songs like Black Korea. You'd have songs, NWA songs that were about killing black people. Hip-hop was just completely like punk. It was just offensive to everyone. But someone decided somewhere it was no longer acceptable to say cracker and honky and those kind of words, but nigger was okay. And for me, when we look at who owns hip-hop, Mos Def made a song called Old White Men is running this rap shit. It's called The Rape's Over. It was on a beat, the same beat that Jay-Z made The Takeover on. And that song was taken off of his album without his label telling him, because he criticized white corporate ownership of hip hop. He said some tall Israeli is running this rap shit, and that was taken to be anti-Semitic. Leo Cohen is tall and he's Israeli. It's a statement of fact. It wasn't anti-Semitic. He was like, that's who's in charge of rap. It's not black people. And so I think that the use of that word has become, to me, very gimmicky, has become a dangerous way of glossing over the reality of what it was to be black in America. And certainly for me, as someone whose mother's white, I don't understand the motivation for white people to want to use the word. When people are like, oh, but why can't I use it? I'm white. I'm like, first of all, why do you feel oppressed by that? I'm confused. And knowing the history, why do you want to call your black friend nigger? Let's just deal with that for a minute. Because my mum's white, and she's never had the desire to say, look at my little nigger son. So I'm confused why people want to use the word. Now, black people can figure out for ourselves whether or not we think it's intelligent to continue using the word, but why are young white kids like, I just want to call, I just want to? This comes back to your question a little bit, this perverse sort of, ooh, blackness is just a bit dangerous and it's a bit sexy and it's a bit violent. Ooh, can I say nigger, can't I? It's a little bit of that, yeah? But I don't think a song called Honkies in Harlem would get on Radio 1. But Niggas in Paris will.
Again, consider these reflective questions, as previously you may want to use these to reflect individually or with your team. And the third practice example, please read the third practice example, and again, we will consider some reflective questions on the next slide. Again, consider these reflective questions, as previously you may want to use these to reflect individually or with your team. We have identified here some general questions that can be used by leaders within supervision, team meetings, debriefs, or professional learning to plan for and consider the implications of racist incidents in a youth and community work setting. Please use these within your leadership roles, in discussion with your teams, or as they may be relevant to you. Focusing on the first reflective question, do your relationships or behaviour policies offer guidance on your responses to incidents such as these? Within your policies, do you have a clear process for handling racist disclosures? The DARPL Eradicate Guide may be helpful. It is not explicitly focused on youth work settings, but it is relevant and adaptable to a youth work context. We have linked the DARPL Eradicate Guide in the reference list. So taking this forward, becoming an anti-racist leader within a youth work setting requires organisational change. If we reflect on the way we work with young people, we can recognise the youth work principle of starting where young people are at. It is valid to apply this to ourselves and our organisations. We think about our starting points in terms of becoming anti-racist organisations. We recommend two helpful, different but complementary resources to support you in leading this process. The first framework, which will be familiar to you all, is the 2024 ESTIN framework for the inspection of youth work services. The framework considered 3 inspection areas. How does youth work help young people achieve their potential? what young people can expect from youth work provision, and leading and improving. There are many aspects of youth work inspection framework that are relevant to the aims of an anti-racist youth work sector in Wales. The first inspection area, which asks, how does youth work help young people achieve their potential, explores the 5 pillars: educative, expressive, participative, inclusive, empowering. When examining the educative nature of youth work, inspectors evaluate the progress of particular groups of young people. For example, young people at different levels of their development, those from disadvantaged backgrounds, those from minority ethnic groups, and young people who do not have English or Welsh as a first language. When examining the inclusive nature of youth work, Estin state that inspectors should evaluate how young people develop knowledge, understanding and positive attitudes and behaviour in relation to social and cultural identity, language and diversity, included protected characteristics. Inspectors should consider how effectively young people develop their understanding of heritage, locally, nationally and internationally. They should consider if young people recognise the value of their own and other people's languages and respect other people's choices. Inspectors should evaluate how well young people develop as respectful, responsible and active citizens of Wales and the wider world who display high levels of understanding, compassion and sensitivity towards the rights and feelings of others. When evaluating what young people can expect from youth work provisions, Estin state that inspectors should evaluate how well youth workers establish good working relationships with young people in which their needs are put first. Inspectors should consider the ways in which the provider develops a programme of activities that reflects the cultural and linguistic diversity of Wales and helps young people understand about community and employment opportunities in Wales. When considering leading and improving, Estin state that inspectors will evaluate to what extent youth work leaders have created a culture and ethos to support the development and professional learning of all staff and volunteers, including the arrangements to support the active engagement of all of the workforce in increasing their professional knowledge, understanding and skills. They should consider professional learning, such as this, undertaken by staff and its impact on young people's outcomes and well-being and their own practice. When evaluating the impact of the care, support and guidance on safeguarding young people, inspectors should consider how well the youth work service provider responds to, records and manages any alleged incidents relating to prejudice, related bullying, harassment and discrimination, whether by staff or by young people, included onward referral and reporting where appropriate. Developing young people's knowledge and understanding of emotionally damaging or unsafe behaviours, for example, grooming, harassment, discrimination, bullying and extremism, protects young people from radicalisation and exploitation, promotes an anti-bullying culture and a positive approach to managing young people's behaviour, records and addresses poor behaviour and specific types of bullying, including those involving protected characteristics and how well leaders use the records to improve the provision. Cotter's Change Model 2014-2021 is a useful framework for leaders to use in youth work settings. Cotter identifies 8 accelerators for change. For example, in this context, achieving an anti-racist youth work service or project. The first is to create a sense of urgency, where leaders take their teams on a journey, identifying the starting point and make clear the rationale for change. Leaders should be open, honest and reflective, creating an environment where discussion amongst colleagues is constructive and future focused. Next, leaders create a guiding coalition, a collective or team to take the change forward. A team approach increases the chance of success and distributes responsibility while increasing ownership across the service. Creating a vision for change is the next stage. This sets out in clear and impactful way the change that the team will achieve. As a leader, next you communicate the vision. The whole service needs to understand the vision and engage in discussion about why this is important and how it will be achieved. Removing obstacles is the next stage. All change faces obstacles or barriers. The solution to this is usually improved communication and better teamwork in order to remove barriers, whether these are practical obstacles or team-based resistance. Creating short-term wins is the next stage in Kotter's model. Making progress and achieving short-term wins against a change plan builds momentum and motivation in your team. Including short-term goals alongside longer-term objectives helps. Short-term wins should be balanced by next consolidating improvements. Achieving change is a long process that requires consistent and continuous effort, chipping away at change goals and remaining focused on the long-term vision. The final change stage in Kotter's model is to create the changes, anchoring, embedding, or rooting them in your service. Depending on how significant the level of change is, the embedding of such change could impact your core values or your wider organizational strategy. This will require review and reflection by you and your team. Achieving the youth work goal within the Anti-Racist Wales Action Plan requires youth work leaders to undertake some form of baseline assessment. So taking this into account, we have identified a sample draft baseline assessment checklist for you to adapt for use with your own teams and in your own youth work settings. Following undertaking a simple baseline assessment, you may wish to draft your own organisational action plan, setting out the steps you will take to work towards the goal set out for youth work in the Anti-Racist Wales Action Plan. A reminder, the goal is to promote equality, inclusion and diversity, both in terms of access to youth work services in Wales and in relation to the role that youth work services can play in proactively challenging discriminatory attitudes and behaviours within society. This example assessment is very much a snapshot and an example of the way in which you may wish to begin the process of baseline assessment in order to better understand your starting point. Next, we consider participation, the foundation of youth work practice in Wales as recognised in the Social Services and Wellbeing Wales Act 2015. As previously stated, when undertaking any organisational change, you need to know your starting point. The aspect of the baseline assessment suggests that you consider strategy and what you need to do to achieve strategic change. We now consider relationships and relational practice, considering the nature of relationships between young people and their peers, young people and youth workers, and between youth workers and their colleagues. Professional learning is the next area of focus within the example baseline assessments. Finally, we ask you to reflect on leadership. To conclude this professional learning session, we refer here to 2 curriculum resources that can be shared by youth and community work leaders with your teams, who in turn may wish to share them with young people. These curriculum resources were made by young people supported and enabled by professional youth workers and creative artists. Wales Untold was made in 2015 by young people supported by youth workers and a professional film crew. Wales Untold is a story of people, industry and power. The film explores the African presence, products and outcomes of black labour at the heart of Welsh and British history. It explores how community and labour relations have defined and created a nation, Wales. The link on the reference list takes you to the full film production. In making the documentary Humanitary, 11 young people from Newport worked alongside a professional film crew and youth works to embark on an incredible journey of research and discovery. Their adventure dispelled ignorance and revealed exclusive interviews and experts from multiple scientific disciplines, such as genetics, environment, anthropology, as well as history and sociology. Humanitary is a multicultural focused documentary project which depicts the story of the human family. Humanitary focuses further on the history of the hominoid and the global family tree and sets out to show the connections that exist between all humans, such as the shared concern for the global warming crisis. The film has won Best Documentary Audience Choice at the Pan-African Film Festival in Los Angeles, California. It has also won an award in Canada at the Hamilton Black Film Festival. The links in the reference list take you to the trailer and the educational resources developed with DARPL and other humanitarian information. All involved in the creation of these resources, supporting youth work leaders, working towards the Anti-Racist Wales Action Plan, Part 1 and 2, acknowledge that professional learning such as this is just a start in terms of supporting youth work leaders in Wales to contribute to the achievement of an anti-racist Wales by 2030. All youth work leaders should step back, reflect and plan how they will carry out their duty to promote equity and inclusion for all young people from all ethnic backgrounds across Wales. Leaders should challenge themselves. This is everybody's responsibility. The National Youth Work Leadership and Management provision supports the leadership development of all youth work leaders in Wales. We have linked to the ETS Wales Leadership and Management Programme in a reference list of this training to support such wider professional learning. Thank you.